Good afternoon. My name is Juergen Steinmetz, joining you here from Honolulu for eTN News. We're going to be live with an upcoming broadcast. Give us about 3-4 minutes to collect some more people to join us, and we'll give you the information. Thank you. Hello and good afternoon. My name is Juergen Steinmetz, joining you here from eTN News and Livestream.travel in Honolulu. With me, as always, is Dr. Peter Tarlow in College Station, Texas. And Peter, if I look outside, it's beautiful weather here again. I know our weather report is quite boring. It's really not the same as Corona. We had 13 deaths, what is the highest number we ever recorded in Hawaii. So that is not that good, but the weather is nice and it seems to be inviting here. But sometimes, of second thoughts about saying how inviting it should be. But how are things in College Station?
Well, we're having a end of summer heat wave, which is very typical of September. I should say that, in a sense, boring is good. Because when it's not boring, it means you're having a hurricane, or you're having a tornado, or you're having an earthquake, or forest fires that are taking place around Lake Tahoe in California and Nevada. So, to be quite honest, I'm happy with boring. It's we had a 20-minute rain shower, lots of heat, humid, Texas in the summer, but the earth didn't open up. We don't have a forest fire. We're not in Louisiana where they're really suffering and having a terrible situation because of the hurricane, which was so bad. I'm told that the wind was so strong that it reversed the flow of the Mississippi River.
Isn't that amazing?
And then it started to push the water north instead of the water flowing, south toward the Gulf of Mexico. So that just tells you, just how powerful that hurricane was, and how many people lost their homes, I think New Orleans, to the best of my knowledge, still doesn't have electricity 2 or 3 days later. And imagine in a hot, humid climate without any electricity, how miserable that must be.
No, that is definitely, and it's the second time this is happening, and I think this time was even worse. The levee luckily didn't break. It could have been a lot worse than it is even.
Yes.
And but then there are other parts in the country like California, Lake Tahoe, a major resort area, literally under fire.
Yes.
And Corona is hunting everyone. Yeah, it's not an easy
Oh,
time.
and you're starting to see that in economics. as you reported before, but we're seeing, Alitalia may very well go bankrupt. There's a lot of rumors now that both Air France and KLM, which is really one company, may also go bankrupt. It's unknown how many other European airlines will go bankrupt. I sent you a film today. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but there's why people hate some of the American airlines, and flying in the U.S. is not a pleasure. And one of the things you're seeing is that big airlines are being reduced to these little commuter jets. So next week, my wife and I will be going to Washington, and that's a long flight. That's for the United States, it's 3.5, 4-hour flight. We're on a commuter jet, and
yeah, smaller jet reflects smaller traffic, less demand on traffic.
Yeah.
We did a story on Emirates, one of the largest carriers in the world, is taking the last Airbus 380. So it looks like the season of huge planes like the Airbus 380 that can, in some versions, take up to 700 passengers, is no longer under demand.
Right.
The demand are smaller jets that can take maybe more regional routes, so people don't have to change planes. Everything is changing, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a real issue, of course, because if the airlines start really having trouble, and around the world you have terrible problems with roads not being taken care of well. I think today there was a terrible accident in Peru, and a lot of people died. And I've been very often in Peru, and I will tell you, going across La Cordillera, going across the Andes Mountains, it's a scary proposition. I mean, you really, and if you're not worried about your bus or your car falling off the side of the road, rocks fall down from the mountains, and you pray all the time that a rock won't fall on your car or your bus and kill you all from a rock slide. Lots of times that's never happened with a rock that's fallen down, but for example, I go from Lima to Huánuco, which is about 300 kilometers, not very far, 180, maybe 200 miles, more or less. In the United States, there would be a 3-hour trip for about 200 miles, 300 kilometers. In Peru, it can take me up to 24 hours. And part of that's because the roads are blocked when there's a rock slide, and then everything just stops until they can clear the rocks. And you know what? That could take 4 or 5 hours that you're just stuck on a bus.
Yeah, and it's not only rock slides and bad roads, it's also the danger of earthquakes in Peru.
Yeah.
There are frequent earthquakes. I've been in Peru during almost major earthquakes. One, I was asleep, and I remember I woke up in the morning and everyone was standing in the kitchen at my friend's where I was staying and talking about an earthquake. And I said, "What earthquake?" But if you don't have a good sleep,
It's good if you can sleep through an earthquake. The problem is when the earthquake wakes you up because the house is falling down. That's not so good.
And there are scary parts, and I can tell you this story, what happened to me in the Caspian Sea in Iran, when I was driving to the Caspian Sea from Tehran, and we were up in the mountains and got caught in an earthquake, and literally there were rocks flying everywhere. And we were really, really lucky not to be hit by one of the rocks, and made it into one of these highway stops at a steep road with, hundreds of feet of terrain. And we were able to get inside the stop, and then a big rock really hit our vehicle. And so, yes, it's scary, and it can happen anywhere in the world. It's not just isolated to Peru, of course.
Of course, we all live in God's hands. My whole point is that there's a real problem of lack of infrastructure in much part of the world. Some of that we were able to hide or get around by having good airline service. But if airlines become more expensive, less frequent, airline companies start going out of business, then we're forced to go back to surface transportation. And that means some of the infrastructure problems that we've had in the past now may become new problems in the future. And of course, on top of that, countries are closing their borders again because of COVID and the Delta variant and whatever new variants are coming down the pike. And so, you know, it's not like the good old days, which was only about 6 months ago or a year ago, but you just bought an airline ticket, got on a plane, and flew someplace. And it was not considered at all abnormal, maybe say from the United States to go to Europe for a 3 or 4 day weekend. You don't do that today.
Yeah, and Peter, it takes us to a story we published today. It's your story.
Yeah,
And it's saying, how safe are we 20 years after September 11th? And that's probably one of the interesting parts, taking back that there is an entire generation now of people who don't know really what happened on September 11th or really have no idea. So
25% of the US population was born after December 11th, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow, that is definitely a change, and I think in everyone's memory who was alive and an adult during this time. I think everyone can recall this day, what they did on this day. It was such an impact it made in the world. I remember on that day at 4 a.m, our time in Hawaii, when this happened, 10 something in New York, my dad called me from Germany and telling me that you are turn the TV on. It looks like you guys are in a war. And so we were. And so answering this question, how safe are we 20 years after September 11th?
That's a really good question. And of course, I encourage people to read the article, but some of the things I think we need to talk about is it's not one answer. It really depends. Are you talking about airlines? Are you talking about health? Are you talking about crime on the streets? Are you talking about terrorism? And so there are many different levels to that, but I think we could kind of begin to summarize a little bit. The airline industry has certainly tried to tighten itself up. How well it's done, I guess we could say the proof is in the pudding. We have not had major plane hijackings. When I was in college many years ago, it was a daily event to have a plane hijacked to Cuba, if you remember in the 1960s. And those things pretty much don't exist anymore. So in that sense, at least there are no free trips to Cuba. You're probably going to end up going where you want to go. So that's a good thing. On the other hand, we have not done a good level of really scanning luggage or even vetting people working behind the scenes on airlines. And so there's more prayer than there is necessarily plans on that level. Hotels, prior to COVID, I didn't really see major changes on the whole. I think COVID that might be one of the few good things about COVID, that COVID forced the hotel industry, in order to survive, to be able to really up their game and to really do a lot more thinking about the importance of security, biosecurity, health security, and what that means. In restaurants, very little has happened. I mean, maybe COVID has changed a little bit in the last 19 months, but I don't think most restaurants really think clearly about security. It says 20 years later, it's come and gone. Crime probably has increased in many parts of the world. Certainly in the Americas, crime is a big problem, both in the United States and in Latin America. On the other hand, a good side of that is we've started to really develop what in English is called TOPS, which it's an acronym for Tourism Oriented Policing Protection Services. In other words, tourism police. And 20 years ago, people laughed at that. They thought that was kind of crazy. Today, people are rushing to get good training, to get certification, to work on creating a tourism police force. So that's a real positive that's come 20 years later. The cruise industry right now is kind of, I guess it's existing, but not by much, to say the least. And there's really three parts of security in the cruise industry. It's the cruise industry, the safety of the boat. Will somebody attack the boat? There's the safety of passengers on the boat, which is dealing with sexual assaults, stealing, robberies, etc. on the boat. And then, of course, what happens to people when they get off the boat at port stops. So there's really three levels on that. So those are at least some of the things. In some ways, we've made some progress. In some ways, we've done a lot of talk, and we really haven't done much. And if tourism is to survive, and I think more and more people question its survival, which is really tragic, but let's hope it will survive, it's going to have to come up with better assurances, not only against crime, but it's going to have to come up with now the new threat that may be coming out of Afghanistan, which may become a new center again of terrorism. And remember, the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, they came out of Afghanistan. Will this reappear? Well, time will tell. But if Afghanistan becomes a new center for terrorism, could we have another 9/11? I don't think we can say we can't. I don't know if we will, but it's certainly within the realm of possibilities. Today, I think, because of what happened in Afghanistan, the world of tourism is less safe than we were maybe 6 months ago. So those are at least questions that we have to be asking.
And if you look in the case of Afghanistan, we have been dealing with September 11th, and many of the young people who actually served our country so bravely in Afghanistan didn't even know really what they're, why they're in Afghanistan. And this was the reason. The reason was September 11th. And we just tried to finish this reason, and we're in the biggest mess again. So it seems to be never ending.
Yes. Afghanistan is known as the country that eats empires. And as you know, before the United States was there, the Russians were there, the British were there, the Germans tried to be there and failed. Afghanistan is a really difficult spot. And I think we need to remember the operation over the last 20 years was not just an American operation. Of course, it was led by the United States, but it really was a NATO operation. And as the German defense minister said, this was the greatest failure NATO has ever known. So it impacted, German soldiers, British soldiers, French soldiers, Dutch soldiers, Danish soldiers. I mean, this was really a NATO-wide exercise that did not succeed.
And if you look really at from the military perspective, how many people lost their life? How many people from how many nationalities lost their life?
Yes,
it's a real issue. And then if you put yourself into the human body of a Taliban, I cannot for the world of it understand what can trigger this type of violence and behavior towards fellow human beings. Maybe it's a Western and Eastern type of thinking, but
the West is pretty violent. I mean, it's only 70 years since World War II.
Exactly. Yes.
And certainly Germany stands out as a symbol of violence and a symbol of inhumanity during the Nazi period. So you have the East with right now going on in Afghanistan, but we've had how many wars in Europe? Europe is as tribal as is Afghanistan. We just don't like to say it. And even in Europe, how many groups hate each other? Within in Britain, France, I don't know, Germany, I can't think that. You could probably address that, but there are accents, there are regions, there's ethnic groupings, there's been ethnic cleansing that's taken place in Europe. So there appears to be an evil streak among human beings, which is unfortunate, but it's there. Afghanistan is going to be a real issue. They're now closing the borders. It's becoming a giant concentration camp, a concentration camp on steroids. They're going from house to house. Young women are being sold or boxed up and given as brides, quote unquote, to Taliban fighters. And beheadings are taking place throughout the country, where at least that's what reports are saying. And if that's true, and of course you and I are not there, but if that's true, think how tragic it is. We said after World War II, never again, and here we are. We're back right to where we started.
Yeah, Peter, you're so right, and it's happening in so many parts of the world. Don't underestimate the situation in some parts of China, in Myanmar.
Right.
I mean, you can go on and on and on with
Right.
this type of conflict.
Right. And the Uyghur whole issue in China is also going to spread between Afghanistan and China, because many of those people also live in Afghanistan. And so who knows how that will turn out, So unfortunately, I would like to think that despite the fact that how many millions of dollars have we put into the United Nations, we really haven't gone very far. And you really wonder what exactly has the United Nations accomplished as far as peace. Certainly we've had a war every few years. We've had Vietnam and Korea and Afghanistan, and we're not even talking about Boko Haram in Nigeria, and there's a major war going on right now in Ethiopia, and famines in South Sudan, North Sudan, Congo, Latin America. There's stuff going, Mexico doesn't have a civil war, but you have a crime war between the government and the cartels, which is still, if you get shot by a bullet, you're still dead.
Yes, it's tension everywhere, even though I think everyone is hoping, or was hoping, or maybe is still hoping, that COVID is bringing everyone together, because it affects everyone, no matter what side you're on.
Wouldn't that be nice?
The only one
I heard, lining.
Yeah, the only one I heard it didn't reflect was North Korea. They don't have one COVID case.
Yeah,
refused 3 million vaccines from China. So there are always exceptions to the rule, like the former leader of Tanzania, who himself died on COVID, said it didn't exist.
Exactly. And of course, you have, interestingly enough, in Korea, that's probably the longest war. Remember, we still have thousands of American troops in South Korea. We still, we don't have a shooting war right now, but the potential for a shooting war in between North and South Korea is always there. And you have a government leader in North Korea who would like to start a war.
Well, what can I say? It's exciting times.
Yes, it is. No, but it's interesting maybe to talk a little bit about the fact that maybe, if not tonight, another night, we should talk a little bit about, have the UN agencies really been successful? How successful has the UNWTO been? Is it an agency for good, or has it become a corrupt agency? Is it a symbol of democracy, or has it become a symbol of corruption? And, maybe those are conversations that we ought to be having.
Yeah, and I think this is definitely a good conversation to have. I encourage our readers to look in today's article about the flaws in the last Secretary General elections. After UNWTO, many think became completely non-functioning, and this was going through the biggest crisis that opens up opportunities, in this case, for countries like Saudi Arabia to come up with enormous amount of money trying to bail out the agency. But I'm sure there's a selfish reason behind it too. So we have to see where this all goes.
Yeah. Well, 20 years have come and gone, and I'm not sure we've gone, the time has passed, but I'm not sure where we have gone in the last 20 years.
Well, in any case, no matter what happens, the tourism, the nice thing about tourism, it's an industry of peace, because when you look someone in the eyes and you're in a foreign country, it is there to understand. You're there to understand the person you deal with.
You should be.
You should be there. And hopefully that's a mutual thing,
Yes. We need to really stress that. And one of the things I think is that not all tourists do bring peace. Some tourists don't. And we need to be training the world when we do travel to try to understand we're all ambassadors of our country and to try to make the world at least a little bit better and a little more pleasant. I tell people all the time, if you don't enjoy people, don't be in the tourism industry.
Well, I mean, maybe on a last note, a very interesting and good example, I think, is the situation between the UAE and Israel, for example.
Yes.
These were two nations that are, and they were enemies. They didn't talk to each other. You couldn't find Israel on a map of Etihad Airways, the national carrier for the UAE, for the longest time. And now they're friends. I mean, there's still, during COVID, there are massive number of travel between these two countries. Israel has a tent, what is a symbol of openness, at the upcoming World Expo in Dubai. And people are talking to each other and they're looking at each other. And I can say from personal observation, when I was in Dubai at the Arabian travel market and stayed at the Grand Hyatt in Dubai, one of the nice things in the Grand Hyatt and in many other hotels is there's an open lobby where you can sit down, have a tea, and just look around. And you see groups of people, obviously from Israel, and groups of local Arabs looking at each other and don't really know if they can trust each other. They're not yet talking necessarily to each other, but at least they can look at each other, and there's not going to.
And I think they are beginning to talk.
Right.
As you know, the new ambassador from the Bahrain arrived in Israel this week, and again, that's another country, that, and their number one goal between Bahrain and Israel is tourism. So in that sense, what we're using is tourism, not the individual tourist, but tourism as an industry to bring peace between people. And that's a hell of a lot better than shooting.
Absolutely, Peter. Well, for everyone else, stay tuned. If you wanted to listen to the archive of this segment, you can go to breakingnewsshow.com or go to our YouTube channel. Easiest is you go to youtube.com/travel news group or click on any of the links on any page on eTurbo News and it will get you right to YouTube. You should also subscribe to YouTube so you get updates and you can comment. We have a new thing on YouTube, what you can try. It's called Super Chat. So if you click on Super Chat, you can do this now and try it. Just on the right side, when you're signed in, you have to be signed in. So you have to have a YouTube account to do this. Click on Super Chat and you can send very prominent messages to us. Everyone else will see it. And they cost you $1. You can choose between $1 and $100. And guess what? This money doesn't necessarily go to Peter and myself, but it helps us to pay for the cost of it, and it goes to our staff. Our staff is working many times overtime to help us to put all these news together 24/7. So we'll be very thankful when we see you participating in the Super Chat. Give it a try on the right side. Click on Super Chat.
And better you go for the $100 than the $1.
That is for sure.
Have a good evening from Texas. Good afternoon to Hawaii.
Aloha.
Aloha. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Aloha and good day. My name is Juergen Steinmetz from eTurbo News, and this is a breaking news update. For more news updates and shows, please go to youtube.com/travel news group. youtube.com/travel news group. Here's our update.
Turkey tightens COVID restrictions for foreign arrivals. The updates are implemented in a bid to curb the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic in Turkey, and are set to go into effect on Saturday, August 4. Turkey updates anti-COVID restrictions for foreign arrivals. Regulations aim to curb the spread of COVID-19 pandemic in Turkey. Updated rules set to go into effect tomorrow. Turkey's Interior Ministry issued a circular today, announcing new updates for requirements and restrictions for visitors arriving into the country from abroad. The updates are implemented in a bid to curb the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic in Turkey, and are set to go into effect on Saturday, August 4. Red List, Brazil, South Africa, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Suspension of direct flights from Brazil, South Africa, Nepal, and Sri Lanka will continue until further notice. Passengers who have been to these countries in the last 14 days will be asked to submit a negative PCR test result obtained a maximum of 72 hours before entering Turkey. They will also be quarantined for 14 days in locations determined by the governorships, at the end of which a negative test will be required one more time. If there is a positive test result, the patient will be kept under isolation, which will end with a negative result in the following 14 days. Bangladesh, India and Pakistan. Travel rules for Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan have been eased, and passengers from these countries, or those who have been to these countries in the last 14 days, will be requested to submit a negative PCR test result obtained up to 72 hours beforehand. People who document receiving 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccines granted approval by the World Health Organization or Turkey or 1 dose of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine at least 14 days before entering Turkey will be exempted from quarantine. UK, Iran, Egypt and Singapore. Passengers coming from the UK, Iran, Egypt, or Singapore will be required to submit a negative result from PCR tests done a maximum of 72 hours before entry. For passengers traveling from Afghanistan, those who can provide a document showing they were administered a COVID-19 vaccine in the last 14 days or recovery from COVID-19 infection in the last 6 months will not require a test result or quarantine. Turkish citizens. Turkish citizens entering the country from abroad will also be required to prove that they have gotten 2 vaccine doses at least 14 days prior, or that they have recovered from a COVID-19 infection in the last 6 months. Turkish citizens who can provide a negative PCR test result obtained up to 72 hours prior or a rapid antigen test result obtained up to 48 hours before will also be allowed into the country. Citizens who fail to submit documentation of vaccine status or a negative test will be allowed to go to their residences after a PCR test, and those with a positive result will be isolated until they submit a negative result from a PCR test. Passengers from other parts of the world. Arrivals from other countries will be required to document that they have gotten 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccines granted approval by the World Health Organization or Turkey or 1 dose of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine at least 14 days before entering. Passengers who fail to produce vaccination proof or an official document proving recovery from COVID-19 infection in the last 6 months will be requested to submit a negative PCR result obtained a maximum of 72 hours prior or a rapid antigen test result obtained a maximum of 48 hours prior. Sample-based COVID-19 tests will be available for passengers at all border gates. Children younger than 12 will not be asked for vaccine certification or PRC, antigen test results to enter Turkey.
And this again from Honolulu, from my home office. My name is Juergen Steinmetz from eTober News. We're going to play another 2 or 3 news clips from today's article. And those that are reading etobernews.com, it's very simple. You can read us. You can also listen to us. Every article now has an audio link. So if you don't have time to read us, just listen to us. And if you don't have time to listen to us and you want to watch us, you can do this actually on our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com/travel news group or youtube.com/etobernews. It goes to the same page. And you can listen to all our articles and you see our many panel discussions and news broadcasts we have. If you are on YouTube at this time and you want to participate in our super chat, just look on the right side of your screen and you can easily send us a message by super chat. We will definitely acknowledge this immediately now once we see it, and you'll be surprised. You might be a winner of something a lot more. Just stay tuned. Once we get our first super chat, you're going to be the very first one if you rush now. Let's get to the next news clip from today. Hello and good day. My name is Juergen Steinmetz from eTober News, and this is a breaking news update. For more news updates and shows, please go to youtube.com/travel news group. youtube.com/travel travel news group. Here's our update.
Key European tourism challenges highlighted at Slovenian Forum. It is time to address the shortcomings of tourism industry that have resulted from the expansion in the last 50 years and transform tourism into a much greener, digital and inclusive industry. Bled Strategic Forum is an international conference in Central and Southeastern Europe. COVID-19 pandemic has posed many questions for tourism. The role of tourism at the EU level needs to be rethought. The Bled Strategic Forum has evolved into a leading international conference in Central and Southeastern Europe. The 16th edition took place the 31st of August to the 2nd of September in a hybrid form. The tourism panel held on the 2nd of September brought together top experts from Slovenia and renowned institutions, including EC, UNWTO, WTTC, OECD, etc., HOTREC, ECM, to discuss the future of European tourism. Prominent international and Slovenian experts, guests, panelists and representatives of Slovenian tourism were addressed by Minister of Economic Development and Technology Zdravko Posovalšek, Director General for the Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs at the European Commission Kirsten Jorna, Director of the Slovenian Tourist Board MSC. Maha Pak, Director of Regional Department for Europe at UNWTO Professor. Alessandra Priante and Director of the Portugal National Tourist Board and President of the European Tourism Commission, etc., Luis Araujo. COVID-19 pandemic has posed many questions for tourism. Among the most pressing ones are survival and recovery, along with the transformation of the tourism industry into more resilient and sustainable one. Despite the difficult situation, optimistic forecasts of key international tourism institutions are on the rise. This year's tourism panel has discussed the question, what will the future bring to European tourism? Panelists agreed that the pandemic has had a major impact on tourism industry and posed many challenges, as well as opportunities. It is time to address the shortcomings of tourism industry that have resulted from the expansion in the last 50 years and transform tourism into a much greener, digital and inclusive industry. Key conclusions identified at the panel were: tourists' confidence in travel needs to be rebuilt. Travel protocols and communication and coordination between the member states concerning travel restrictions, COVID tests and quarantine rules need to be improved. Roadmap for sustainable transition is necessary. New performance indicators are needed. Digital transformation of the tourism industry needs to be supported and promoted. Investments and EU funding allocation towards sustainability and digitalization of the tourism industry is required. The role of tourism at the EU level needs to be rethought. DMO transition in their role to actively facilitate the industry transition process to green, inclusive and digital needs to be supported.
Hello and good day. My name is Juergen Steinmetz from eTurbo News, and this is a breaking news update. For more news updates and shows, please go to youtube.com/travel news group. youtube.com/travel news group. Here's our update.
Painful Thailand lockdowns must stop, businesses cry. The Thailand Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration eased some disease controls on Wednesday, September 1, 2021, of Thailand lockdowns. Currently, Thailand lockdowns include a 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. curfew in its dark red provinces. Thai businesses are demanding that lockdowns immediately cease and vaccine distribution be conducted more effectively. Businesses have been on lockdown for over a month and have implemented stringent disease control measures in efforts to avoid future lockdowns. Thailand's Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha said that the 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. curfew in 29 COVID-19 dark red provinces, including Pattaya City and Bangkok, may be shortened or lifted depending on the COVID-19 situation. He said even though the Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration eased some disease controls on Wednesday, he hopes everyone will keep their guard up. The restrictions could be further relaxed if the situation improves. General Prayut said the curfew's shortening or lifting will depend on the number of infections, fatalities, and other metrics related to the pandemic. The Prime Minister said he knew the curfew is affecting entertainment establishments, and associations representing their owners of pubs, bars, and other night spots want to discuss the lifting of more restrictions with the CCSA, but he remains concerned about people flocking to these venues. Thai businesses demand lockdowns stopped immediately. Many businesses were optimistic after the first day of reopening on Wednesday, following more than a month of closure with lockdown measures in place. Many businesses are implementing stringent disease control measures in order to avoid yet another lockdown in the future, while a joint committee has asked the government not to declare any more lockdowns. The Joint Standing Committee on Commerce, Industry and Banking (JSCCIB) has asked the government never again to implement lockdown measures as a COVID-19 response, but instead to focus more on effective distribution of vaccines and transparent communication with the general public. The JSCCIB chairman, Payong Shervanich, said the lockdown measures implemented for more than a month had not led to a significant drop in the number of new COVID-19 cases, but instead caused continuous damage to the economy. Similarly, the Federation of Thai Industries (FTI) President, Suphan Mongkalsuthi, said that the government should not reintroduce lockdown measures, claiming that the rate of vaccination coverage should now reach 70% of the population, if the government is able to achieve its rollout target. Many shopping malls that were deserted during the lockdown sprang back to life yesterday, as many shops and restaurants are now allowed to reopen. At MBK Center in Bangkok, many retailers have reopened their shops with strict health and safety measures implemented. The food court there is now fully prepared for service with most of the staff now fully vaccinated. MBK Center, also known as Mabungkrong, is a large 9-story shopping mall in Bangkok with around 2,000 shops, restaurants, and service outlets. Rebuilding travel.
Thank you for listening to our news update. There's more on youtube.com/travel news group, or you can read us, of course, in going to our news portal at etobernews.com or travelnews.com. And again, now this is live from Etober News in Honolulu. If you wanted to participate in Super Chat, and you must be on YouTube, simply click on the right side where it says Super Chat, and we will recognize it, and you may actually win a prize. Now we're coming to our last segment, and this is the segment you can hear for all our stories on Etober News. Simply click on the audio symbol. It's under the summary on top of every article we publish, and you can actually listen to articles as well. If you want to watch articles, they're all on YouTube. Simply go to youtube.com/travel news group. And on YouTube, you also find hundreds of Zoom discussions we had over the last year on rebuilding the travel and tourism industry, and ongoing discussions. And you'll find what is up at worldtourismevents.com. There's a lot more coming up, specifically when we're looking at World Tourism Day on the 28th of September. We have a number of events coming up before that. So please stay tuned. And you can always watch our breaking news summary with Peter Tarlow. You will see us every day this way. Anyways, just read Etober News. Your news will pop up also on top of every news story and at our homepage whenever we're live. Enjoy our last segment. Hello and good day. My name is Juergen Steinmetz from Etober News, and this is a breaking news update. For more news updates and shows, please go to youtube.com/travel news group. youtube.com/travel news group. Here's our update.
Hawaii worst state in the U.S. for pet-friendly accommodations. The number of pet-friendly properties available can vary quite dramatically from place to place, making some parts of the country much more accessible to pet owners than others. Number of pet-friendly properties vary dramatically from state to state. Illinois, Mississippi and New York are the most pet-friendly states. Hawaii, Alaska and West Virginia are the least pet-friendly U.S. states. 67% of U.S. households, around 85 million families, own a pet, and 43 million houses are occupied by renters. So, what if you need to relocate with your furry friend? The number of pet-friendly properties available can vary quite dramatically from place to place, making some parts of the country much more accessible to pet owners than others. With this in mind, travel experts wanted to find out which states, towns and cities have the largest proportion of homes available to rent that also accept pets. Looking at the top 50 most populated U.S. cities, the experts recorded the proportion of properties available to rent that also accept pets. Additionally, we've found out the percentage of available rents in each state that will accept a tenant with pets, revealing the best places in the country for pet owners to live. Illinois is the best state in the country for pet owners who are looking to rent, with 59.87% of properties accepting pets. So if you're a pet owner looking to move to a new part of the country, Illinois might be a good bet for you. The second best state for renting with pets is Mississippi, with 52.28% of lets being available to pet owners. This makes Mississippi the most pet-friendly of all the southern states, and a great place for pet owners to live. New York is the third best state in the country for pet-friendly renting, with 47.89% of properties allowing tenants to bring their pets. This high percentage makes New York the best state on the East Coast for living with your pets. Top 10 best states for pet-friendly rentals. Rank state pet-friendly lets. Total lets percent pet-friendly. 1 Illinois 2468 4122 59.87%. 2 Mississippi 229,438 52.28%. 3 New York 63 21 3196 47.89%. 4 Georgia 1914 4072 47.00%. 5 North Carolina 1765 3917 45.06%. 6 Tennessee 895 2156 41.51%. 7 Indiana 804 2050 39.22%. 8 Nevada 494 1344 36.76%. 9 Alabama 494 1351.
Well, let's cut it off here. It's going to see, not everything is easy. Specifically, if you read tables, if a computer reads tables, it becomes a challenge. However, we're learning and we're going to be improving. Sorry for this. And I hope you will watch us again tomorrow. And if you wanted to listen to the section we had in the beginning with Dr. Peter Tarlow one more time, just stay tuned and it will repeat on the eTurbo News screen, or simply go to youtube.com/travel news group and you will see our segment anytime you like to see it. Good evening from here, and we talk to you soon. Aloha.